All right, I think we're streaming. Double check here. All right, I think we're live. Let's jump into this. There we go. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Nobody here right now, but if you're watching this on a replay, thanks for being here. I'm going to be drawing, just doing some character design stuff today. So what you're looking at right now is the protagonist from my graphic novel. His name's Coral. I'm going to be working on him at different ages. So you're going to see him as a younger child. He's about 15 here. You'll see him a little bit younger, see him a little bit older. Not sure how much I'm going to get through during this stream, but we'll get started and see how far we get. So if you're watching this after the fact, feel free to leave comments if you have any questions. But if you go back to the beginning and you're watching this live, feel free to ask any questions, and I'll try to keep an eye on that off to the left here. So let's get started. First thing is Coral's about 4 heads high or so. Say maybe closer to 3 when I draw him. So we're going to start with him. Let's do him a little bit younger. So I have to figure out where I want the ground, first of all. Let me get my stuff set up here. I didn't get it ready before the stream like I told myself to. Just give me 1 second. And, okay. So we'll put the ground out there. Could raise it up, honestly. Give more room for the feet. But yeah, let's do that. Let's do it about there. I'm not going to be drawing scale with the image. The image is just there for your reference. I've actually got a whole other reference board next to me that I can look at for different poses and stuff like that too. I didn't know I was supposed to. Somehow managed to drag it into an area I can't get. All right, whatever. Sorry, give me 1 second if you're watching. There we go. Okay. Just gotta resize it, and it should be all set. Okay. So, like I was saying, Coral's about 3 heads high, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what I'm going for. But usually I'd say, looking at him there, he's a solid 3 heads. So when we go to draw this, I'm going to start with just 2 heads. So I have to figure out how big the head is first. And to start with a circle. Everything's going to be real rough for this. I'm figuring stuff out and I'm kind of discovering it as I go. So there's not going to be a whole bunch of perfect lines and final lines here. We'll get there as we go. So that's about 2 heads. That takes us about to the ground. We wanted to go to about here. So having a little bit extra is not a bad thing. Usually when I look at character designs, they count the number of heads and they don't include the feet. I don't know why, but not always, but a lot of classic character designs I've looked at, a lot of classic character sheets that I've looked at, for some reason, it seems to be that the feet don't get included. I don't know the answer as to why. But anyway, so that's about 2 heads high. Now the first head's going to be the head. Second head's going to be the body. So we're going to divide that about in half to give us the waistline. And now I know that Coral's going to fit somewhere within about that space. And I'm actually going to just carry these lines down and just curve them a little bit, just like that. And that's going to give us the basic proportions for younger Coral. And then real quick, if I show you, so for an older Coral, we're going to go with more heads. So it could be 4 or 5 heads, that kind of thing. For my adult characters, I tend to do 5 heads. Realistic humans tend to be 6 or 7. usually closer to 6. And then if you see like superheroes and stuff like that, they're 7 or 8. So if you think about a head as being about a foot tall, meaning 12 inches, then if you're 6 feet tall, like I am, then you're 6 heads tall in theory. Now the head could be 12 inches, it could be 14 inches. You could have somebody like Wemby in the NBA who just defies all those rules. They're general guidelines. So just something to kind of remember as you're doing this, especially with cartooning. You don't really want to get too bogged down in trying to make it look too realistic, or else it's going to look kind of generic. Okay, so another head up here. I'm just going to measure off to the side here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. I said I wanted about 5, but looking at it there, I think that's going to be big enough. I'm going to need more room for his hair and stuff eventually, but we'll just block in the character for now. So again, if we look for about halfway, I know it should be a little bit higher, but I'm going to put the waist about there. And I'm just going to draw in the body shape for the most part. And that's going to give us something like this. I know it's a generic kind of stick figure looking thing for now, but that'll just kind of give us the dimensions to look at. And I can compare that to the coral that I've been working on, and I can say, well, it looks a little similar even though it's a whole extra head. So we might have to make the head a little bit smaller, but we'll worry about that later when we get there. That's one way you can also increase the size of the body, is by decreasing the size of the head. Sounds pretty basic, but if you think about it, if he's 4 heads high now, if I shrink the head down, it might be more like 5 heads high. So we'll worry about that when we get there. I can do the same thing over here for the smaller one. If I make that head bigger, then all of a sudden that body gets even smaller. And sometimes you'll have, for like babies and really young cartoon characters, you'll see the head bigger than the body, and completely defying the laws of nature in some ways. So going into coral here, I do want to turn him a little bit. I don't want to see him straight on from the front. So I'm going to give myself some guidelines there. I'm going to put in an eye line for myself about halfway, just so I know what I'm doing. And then bear with me here because I know kind of how to start coral at this point. So I'm just going to start with the eyes. Bring these a little closer together. Nose. I've been drawing coral for about 2 years now or so. So kind of got the hang of it. Plus he's loosely based on me from a design perspective, not so much a character perspective, but not unlike me either. But just makes it easier when you draw what you know. So I made him similar to me. So he's got eyebrows that come up above the head. Sorry, not above the head, above the eyebrow, or above the eye. And then he's got a jawline that sticks out a little bit from the original circle itself. All right, I can make the eyes a little bit bigger if I wanted to make him feel like he's even younger. I can also keep this jawline closer to the original circle. That's going to make him feel younger. And that mouth is pretty high up, so I'm just going to lower that a little bit. Okay, so we've got bald coral now. And now I just need to add the hair. So thinking about him being younger, I think I want him to have less hair. I think I want him growing his hair out to be something that he started doing as he got older. So as I draw the hair in here, I'm still doing the same shapes, but I'm also keeping it closer to the original circle so it doesn't look quite as long. And even these wisps that come off, I want those to feel like they're kind of shorter and sticking closer to the head. If everything as far as his facial features and stuff like that were to be the same, then if I kept his hair and his facial features and everything the exact same, he's not going to de-age the way that I want him to. So just talking about that for a second, there are going to be there are going to be some parts of, actually, while you're here, I am recording this one, so this one will be up after the fact. And I changed the Twitch settings so that those will stick around too, hopefully. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Some parts of the body tend to stay the same size as we get older, but some parts start off small and get larger, longer, depending on what they are. So kids always laugh when I say that. But point being, stuff like the nose. Your nose starts off like a button when you're really young. Like if you look at a baby, most babies' noses look like a little button nose. And then if you look at some older people, especially older men, they sometimes get this really large sphere on the end of their nose. And that ball at the end of their nose, it didn't start like that. It got larger and larger as they got older. For some people, it's their ears. Another thing that tends to get larger on the face as you get older is the jawline drops down, and you start to see that extend beyond the cranium, or the original circle that we're starting with for the head. So one thing that stays the same size on the face are the eyeballs. So most of the time when you see cartoon characters that are really young, they tend to have really large eyes. Babies, when you look at real babies, they have really large eyes, disproportionately large eyes to their head. That's because they have full-size adult eyeballs inside that little tiny head, and that head gets bigger and the eyeballs stay the same size, so the proportions change. And so if you want to make a character look really old, you can make the eyes really small and the nose really big and the jaw come down really far. And if you want to make a character really young, you make the eyes really big, keep the jawline really tight to the cranium, and you make the nose really small. So you can play around with that, and you don't just need wrinkles to make a character look older. You can actually exaggerate the facial features and have the same effect. So I think that's looking okay for the head for now. Thinking about what he's wearing as a kid and the body type. So we're gonna come in here and give him some short sleeves. Kind of give him mittens right now for the hands. We'll worry about those in a second. Put the legs in there. And this stuff's going to be different for everybody, but these are just kind of the general rules that I'm following for the way I'm drawing the characters in my comics. So again, some of this stuff's already kind of thought out. I'm going to give him a t-shirt, and I'm going to make it striped like the one he has on now, because that's one of the things I want to stay consistent about the outfit. Is I want to see those horizontal stripes repeating, even if they're not quite the exact same. Like I can make these stripes bigger, or thicker, I should say, than what we had in the original one. And that might make it appear like something that a younger kid would wear. Because the more dense the striping is, the more sophisticated the design is, I would say. Whereas the larger they are, kind of the more it would fit with something that you would see younger kids wearing. Now, that's not always true, but as I draw it in there, hopefully you can kind of see what I mean. As far as it makes the body just appear smaller because there's less stripes. The body is smaller, but it also makes those stripes look a lot bigger compared to the body. And then since Coral's wearing pants here, I'm going to give him some shorts. Just to change it up. And then since he's turned towards us, the leg on our right-hand side is going to overlap the body, and then the body's going to overlap the leg on our left-hand side. Give him some similar shoes. He has Velcro shoes on. As a teenager, which might seem kind of weird, but I did it for aesthetic purposes, just so that get it in there. And honestly, most times I draw his shoes, I don't even put those on there. So that might be something that ends up just staying as a character design on the model sheet, but not actually making it to the final comic. You don't see his feet most of the time anyway. So we'll just leave. Well, we'll put him in there. He's younger, so it makes more sense when he's younger, I guess. As far as why I did it, I just thought it made an interesting design choice versus the laces, but I think laces make more sense, honestly. All right, let's work on these arms a little bit here. Come down here. Thumb. Want to keep the fingers pretty short because that's going to make him look younger too. Shorten that thumb too. Sorry, I got flipped around. Hand backwards. Not backwards, but I'm seeing the wrong side of it. Good enough. Not my best hand, but we'll worry about this when we get to final lines. Good enough. Okay, I could define stuff a little bit more, but we'll move on to older coral just to keep the stream moving. Okay, so same idea over here. I'm going to turn in the same direction. Typically, if I was doing a demo, I would actually switch that up, but I want to keep it consistent for this. On the eye line, and then the eyes are just going to be a little smaller compared to the head, just so that it doesn't feel like we're getting any larger of the eyes, getting any younger. And then for the nose here, we're going to just push it out from the head a little bit more and define the nostrils a little bit more. That might be too much, but we'll see what it looks like when we're done. Change it if we need to. All right, so same idea, same eye shape. The nose. Extend his jaw down further. Like that. Now for his hair now, I want it to be even longer. Like he's had more time to grow it out and he doesn't cut it as regularly. He's an adult now, so he gets to pick when he gets a haircut. So we'll make this a little bit longer. Now that could go the opposite direction. It's possible there could be a character where they had longer hair when they were younger and then they cut it and now it's shorter. That's not outside the realm of possibilities here. But just because I had it shorter for the younger version, I want to make sure it's longer for the longer version. And then another way you can make characters look older, if they're male characters, is by giving them a beard. So, or even non-binary characters, but we can add in a beard or any facial hair here. So we could go with a goatee if we wanted to. Let's see what that looks like real quick. If I zoom out there, hopefully you can start to see how that's starting to look like an older version of the character, but still maintaining some of those parts of the character that we recognize. Now, there's going to be some things that need to be corrected, like this eye's too far away and stuff. I'll do that now, but that kind of thing that's the kind of thing that we'll get to when we get into flipping it and taking a look at how things are looking. Even, I'll show you right now, this eye line needs to be continuous, like that, the bottom of it and the top of it. So I go from one side like that, straight over to the other side like that. Will they line up? That's a little closer. So little things that will get closer and closer as we go, but we're starting to get the gist of it here. And then we come down from the eyebrow, we're going to go into the sideburn, but there's not really a sideburn, just kind of hair overlapping where the sideburn would be. All right, so we'll define that a little more as we go, but let's take a look at what he's going to be wearing now. So instead of a t-shirt, now I'm going to have him wearing a collared shirt, I think. Maybe instead of a jacket, I'll put him in like a blazer or something. I don't know, just playing around with ideas, see if it works or not. when you're doing stuff like this, you want to think about who the character is when they're younger, who the character is when they're older. They're going to go through things in the story that are going to change them. And they're going to be completely different before the story than they are after the story if things work out the way they're supposed to. And, well, as long as they're a dynamic character, not a static character. And so as you're doing this, you want to start thinking about how this character thinks, how they feel. And all those choices are going to go into some of the choices you're making as a character designer. The story, as I learned from Nicholas Cole when I took his character design course a few years ago, you want the story to inform every decision you make about the character. And so for me, when I first came up with Coral, I had to first come up with the story that I was going to use him for, and the world that he exists in, and the journey that he goes on, and his main motivation, and all those things wound up informing the decisions about the character that I created. And that still is the case when I'm aging him or de-aging him here. I still want to feel like these choices make sense for who the character is and what they've been through. So for Coral, he goes through a pretty extreme journey. He learns a lot of things, and by the end of it, he's very much changed for the better. So thinking about this older version, the younger version's going to be... Oh, I saw your comment just now. But as you're making these choices and thinking about how they fit for the character, you just want to make sure that it makes sense for who the character is. So for Coral here, I'm thinking he's probably in his, let's say, 30s, maybe at this point. He's a little bit older, a little bit wiser, taking all that stuff that he learned along the way, and now he's doing what he wanted to do when he was younger, and whatever it is requires him to dress a little bit nicer than he did previously. So we'll do that. But we want to keep some of those aspects of him in there. So maybe with the blazer, he's wearing a hoodie. So we can keep that hoodie in there by adding the hood back here and then adding a couple of lines inside of the jacket, or the hoodie sticking out behind the jacket, just like that. And then I like to make the hoodie just stick up a little bit higher than the jacket. So I'm going to make this shirt stick up a little higher than that. Just erase that bit out for now. So that gives us something that's going to start to see that design carry forward. And in fact, what I can do for the younger version is he's got his shirt tied around his waist when he's a teenager. I can keep that. So maybe that's something he's been doing since he was younger, because I'm not going to do it for the older version. Now, that might be something that just happens as a teenager. It might be something that he's never done before, and it's just out of necessity in the story. But in order to try to maintain as much of the character design, the original character design between the two versions, I think that giving him the shirt on his waist for the younger version makes sense to me, especially with how much we already changed. So when I do these front curls, I want that line to be continuous as well. So I'll draw through so you can see. I'm going to draw it like that, except I'm only going to draw the two sides. So one right there, there. It's really easy to do if you keep your hand in the same spot, your palm in the same spot, and pivot your wrist or your shoulder as you do it. So that way it's like you're still drawing the same curve. If you lift your hand and try to draw the second part, it's going to probably not be exactly the same curve or exactly the same angle that you're trying to go for. And then what happens is if you take this point and this point right here and you curve those together in the back. Well, let me just draw through so you can see. So there to there, basically. But we're just going to draw the part that you can see. Something like that. And then I tend to shade in. Oh, that's the light. I tend to shade in. Oh, sorry. Saw the wrong line. It's up here. I just shade in the back part. You can see I did it in the original version too. too many lines. Not enough definition here, so let me just try to clean some of this up. So that's his pant leg, that's his pant leg, the shorts. Oops. So this is what I was talking about earlier as far as cleaning it up. Like, kind of happens as you go, and then you do it at the end on top of everything, a different layer. But it's so messy of a process. I wouldn't really worry about trying to do too much of that early on, because like you saw, I just kind of totally changed the legs. Okay, so the bigger one is too big. Shrink this guy down a little bit. It's gonna raise the ground, but that's okay. We'll move back later. All right, and then he needs the top of his head back. Draw that in real quick. As far as how far above the head you go, that's going to depend on how thick the hair is, but you definitely want to go above the original shape that you used for the head, because that's going to be, it's going to make it look like the hair is on top of the head and not stuck inside the head almost. So definitely make sure it goes past that. Oh yeah, you missed that at the beginning. So I'm doing younger coral and older coral. So trying to play around with aging him and de-aging him as I go. So one's older, one's younger, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what these look like. And it is not lost on me that they look like me. Like I said, that was kind of the design from the beginning, but we can try to get further and further away from that as we go, depending on if it's working or not. Biggest thing for me right now, though, as I'm doing it, is I'm trying to feel out the individual parts and the whole design as I'm doing this, because I don't have a vision in my head of what this is supposed to look like right now. I don't know exactly what coral looks like at this age, so it is sticking pretty close to me right now. But once we get an idea of what this looks like, then we can start playing around with it. So now I'm just coming in here and trying to define the hair a little bit more so we can see it a little bit better. Another way you can age a character is by having them start balding, but that doesn't really make sense. It's the amount of hair that I have, so I'm going to keep Coral with a full head of hair here. But the character is not entirely, I'm not saying the character is me by any stretch of the imagination, so we don't need to stay that close to it. Just thinking what else I can do to make it look younger, older, sorry. So we can double up the wrinkles. Just an extra little line there. I've got the goatee, so I don't really have wrinkle lines around the mouth, but he's not that old either, so just a few wrinkles is gonna work for this. And then I'm gonna think about the 3D surface of the facial hair here and just start to put in some lines for myself for how the hair is going to kind of flow up and down that. Something like that. I definitely think this stream's a little slower. It seems like it's just you and me. I don't know if anybody else is coming or out, but I didn't publish anything to tell anybody, so I might find it after the fact, but now that I know what I'm doing, I'll probably start telling people about them from here on out. Oh, another thing we could do with Coral, since he's older, is give him glasses. He didn't have glasses when he was younger, but he did have a mask on for Halloween, so we could play around with that for the glasses. So let's try it. Tell you what, I'm going to duplicate this so I still have it, and we'll work on a backup just in case. So I'm going to block in around the eyes for where the glasses would go, and then give myself a general rectangle for where those would exist. I want the one closer to me, which is on our right, to be a little bit larger, and the other one a little bit smaller. And then I just erase out the eyes. And just leave the glasses with the pupils. Now my only concern is his twin brother has glasses, and if I leave him with glasses and his twin brother with glasses, then it's going to be harder to tell the difference between them. So I don't know. I'm going to save this one as a backup, and we'll go back to this one for now. Okay, so what else can I take from the original one? Well, I still got to define more of the body, so I guess we'll worry about that for now. Oops. So again, just trying to define where the final lines are going to be versus all of these discovery lines that I'm making as I figure stuff out. And the further along I go, the more clear that becomes. What are you thinking? Okay, so what do you want? So you can see how I start with the thumb and the index finger, because those are the closest fingers to me from the front. And then once I get those in, I put the other fingers behind those inside of the shape. I haven't craving hibachi. Do you want me to text you an order later? Sorry, I'm talking to my wife about dinner in case you guys are watching this after the fact and wondering what we're doing. So anyway, while I'm waiting for her to get back to me, you can see I made the hands a little bit different between the different versions. So I kept the fingers smaller in comparison to the palm to begin with. And then for this new version, with the older version, I'm making the fingers longer. That's another thing that tends to get larger or longer as we get older. The fingers tend to get longer compared to the palm. The arms get longer. The whole body gets longer. And that's why the number of heads tall you are gets more and more because the body's increasing size, not so much the head. Call you or call the order in? Oh, yeah, text me the order then. What you want? Are you still leave it at 3? Okay. All right, yeah, just text me and then I'll put it in when I'm done here. I don't know how long I've been streaming so far. Do you? I don't think I can see anything here until it's done. That's weird. 34 minutes. Okay, so I'll probably go till 3 and then call in the order. So, um, what time do you want to pick it up? Okay. All right. Just text me with the order and let me know. Anyway, back to this. I have to figure out if I want this collar to be in front of the jacket or behind the jacket. Take a look at. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to see much of it. Yeah, I think I need it in front of the jacket and the hoodie, but maybe not coming down quite so far. Something like that. Some buttons on there. That. All right. And then, like I said before, the leg closer to us is going to be in front of the body, and the leg further away from us is going to be behind the body. So I'm just going to draw the legs in like that so that that's really clear. But, oh, you know what? The pelvis is going up a little too far off to the side. Let's clean that up. Otherwise, it's going to look like his hips off to the side of his leg, which we don't want. I'm going to keep him in pants this time. He's wearing a collared shirt and a blazer. I think it'd be a little interesting to put him in shorts. Doesn't mean he can't have shorts, but I don't think it really fits with this particular outfit for him. All right, and then we'll just go with the same shoes for now and leave the Velcro off. I think one of the reasons the Velcro might have been there was because the story kind of evolved and I wasn't really quite sure what age Turtle was. Turtle, I keep calling him Turtle because I'm used to talking to Ethan about his character. But Coral. And I was thinking he would be a little bit younger when I first made him. And then I wound up settling on freshman in high school. So the Velcro doesn't really fit a freshman in high school. At first he was a middle schooler, and then I was like, is he a middle schooler or an elementary schooler? And then once I got the story figured out, the story told me that he was a freshman in high school. All right, so we'll just define it a little bit more. Bring this, draw a line down. So you can see how far it is from the circle. This was the original circle right here. So there's basically a whole beard right here that got added on. I'm not going to draw on the beard, but we could. The reason I'm not doing a beard is because I feel like if I did another version where he was even older, then I would do the beard. So this feels like the start of the facial hair. Again, this is what I did with my facial hair. So if you know me, you're seeing right through this. But that's kind of what I'm thinking for him as we go. So I'm just noticing the hair's going a little bit off to the side, the center part, which it's not in the direct center every time. It kind of overlaps in different directions, but I want to feel like it's closer to the center, and I felt like it was going off a little bit, so I'm just trying to move that over a little bit closer to the center. I'm pretty happy with it so far. It's definitely going to need some cleanup, but I feel like we're getting a handle on what Coral's going to look like when he gets older. If you're watching the stream, you're seeing it before anybody, because I didn't know what he looked like. Not that you know who Coral is, but maybe eventually. And, eventually I might do different versions of this and see if it evolves over time, and if I feel any differently about it as I get further along with the story, because it's not finished yet. It's thought out, but there's still going to be stuff that pops up as we get there. All right. So, just thinking if there's anything else I can add here. Darken the hoodie a little bit. You know what? I think the shirt he's wearing is going to be the red shirt he's been wearing on his waist most of the story. Not the same one, because that gets torn up as he goes throughout the story a little bit, but kind of ties in. So let's clean this up a little bit, at least define it a little bit more, and then we'll try adding some rough color into it just to get that blocked in. If we have time. I got to be done around 3, so got about 25 more minutes or so. And just so you know, if you're watching this after the fact, I tend to keep the line work pretty loose throughout the early process, even the coloring and rendering and stuff. And then I clean it up at the end. I was explaining this on my Twitch stream earlier in the day, actually. But I find that if I wait until later to be really careful with the line work, I don't do as much of it. And if I do it really early on, I tend to do too much of it, and then I can't see all of it when I'm done. So by getting all the colors and values locked in the way that I want them, it sometimes saves me a little bit of work as far as how much of it I need to do by the end. So it's going to look a little rough for now, but that's okay. Some of it I will clean up though, like here. Bottom of the neck here, I feel like that's just too dark and too thick of lines for that. I want to knock down a little bit more too. There we go, something like that. But there's so many discovery lines, little ghost lines on the paper that we don't need any more. I'm not going to worry about trying to clean all that up or even starting on a new layer. I just don't want to spend that much time yet because I feel like even if I do it, I'm just going to end up overdoing it and then spending too much time that I don't need to. So biggest thing right now is just making sure that I can tell what's a final line versus what's a discovery line so that I'm not accidentally coloring in the wrong thing. All right, not super clean, but I can see everything well enough where I know where I need to put stuff and where I don't. Just boulder coral real quick. All right, that works for me. Let's go ahead and lock this layer. Oh, undo that. Let's go and lock that layer. Make a new one underneath it. And we'll go ahead and color it in. So I've got a color palette for coral already here. Drag that over here so we have it. And I'm just going to do the same parts on both of them at the same time just to make it go a little faster. And I don't need to be super precise about this. It's easier to clean it up after the fact than it is to take my time and be really careful. The biggest thing is to just try to go halfway through each one of these lines and zoom in and out as you need to make that easier. But if you want to overlap the inside parts, then you'll make sure you won't accidentally miss any pixels on the line itself. So I try to be right through the line as much as possible on the outside, but then when I go on the inside of the character, if I overlap it a little bit, it just makes sure that it all gets filled in, especially on the parts that I haven't done yet. I don't mean, when I say this, I don't really mean like I'm going to do it once I get the hair done. I'm not going to overlap with the skin tone into the hair, but with the hair itself, sometimes what I'll do, I'll show you real quick, I'll just not really be super careful like that, and then I make sure that those pixels on the line get filled in too. So then when I go to the skin tone, I start brushing that in. I know that. Oops, I know those pixels are going to get. Sorry, those pixels are going to get filled in, and it's important if I'm going to clip to it for shadows and highlights and stuff like that. I want to make sure there's no holes. Because if there's a hole in this layer and I'm clipping to it, there's going to be a hole in every single layer that clips to it. By hole, I mean missing pixels. So same thing for the eyes. I'm just going to go over the eyes because I haven't done anything with them. They're white, but they're empty pixels. So I'm actually, after I get over this, I'll change the background color. Oh, I didn't do older coral's hair, I guess. So maybe we won't do one color at a time. We'll just do one character at a time. But let's change the background to a gray just so we can see what we've done while we have it. Perfect. And then I need white now. And I like to use the lasso tool for stuff like this because if I try using like a hard round brush, then there's a chance I miss a pixel as I go back and forth with the brush. Whereas with this, I know I'm filling in everything inside of that boundary that I'm creating. So I'm gonna make the shirt the same color as the one that he's wearing. Since I'm not being careful inside of the body, I'm just trying to be careful outside the body and against the skin tone I already did. Just like that. Back to the skin tone actually, except for at the arms. If there is anybody in the chat, feel free to ask any questions, and I'll do my best to check it as I go. I didn't give him any socks, so that's something to think about for later if we want to give him socks or not. But we'll leave him off for now. The shorts are just going to be probably the same color as the pants that he's currently wearing. Use this color, I can use it for the shoes too. Now just be careful when you're using a gray with a gray background like this, because anything that's not contrasting the color you're using enough is going to make it really easy to miss stuff. The higher the contrast, the easier it's going to be to see what you're doing. All right, Coral needs some eyebrows, so I'm going to do that real quick. Not be the permanent eyebrows, but at least I'll give him something for now until we get back to it. Even those look strange, but we'll worry about that later. I think he needs some lines for the eyelid too. Okay, is that it for younger Coral? Yeah, let's go to older Coral. So same brown. And as he gets older and older, the hair might start turning gray, but for now we're going to keep it brown. So while I'm taking my time doing this, for anybody that might be watching and not know who I am, my name's Josh Usmani, and I am a digital artist from Cleveland, Ohio. I am currently working on my first graphic novel. It's called Scarecrow, and this character you're looking at here is Coral. He's the protagonist of the story. It's about twin brothers who disappear on back-to-back Halloween nights. It follows their journeys as they enter a fantasy world called Scarecrow, based on the Halloween traditions of their hometown of Scarborough, and the fallout for the friends and family back home. Doing the whole thing myself, it's going to take a long time, so I'm doing these live streams as a way to kind of work through it and hopefully find an audience that enjoys what I'm doing and wants to see more of it. I've also been teaching for over 10 years now. I teach in the Young Artist program at the Cleveland Institute of Art. I teach cartooning. My wife and I co-teach digital illustration classes. I've taught portfolio prep with her, just a whole bunch of different stuff over there, and all pretty much revolving around cartooning and comics, but also illustration, digital art. We've done storyboarding, webtoons, a whole bunch of different stuff over there. So now that I have a live stream set up that I can use to share my screen and talk about stuff, I'm hoping that I'll be doing more of this. So if you're watching after the fact, I hope you'll consider following along, hitting the bell to be notified next time that I go live, because I'm going to try and do this more and more, and hopefully pass along some of the things that I've learned along the way while I'm doing it. So if you're interested in making a comic yourself, or just interested in drawing, comics, cartooning, digital art, we can talk about my process, my techniques, my tools. You can ask any questions you want. So if that sounds like it's interesting to you, feel free to join along. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat too. If it's after the fact, leave them in the comments, and I'll try and get back to you. I was a traditional artist for most of my life. I took an interactive media class in high school, my junior and senior year, as a vocational program, and the teacher didn't know how to use a computer. So it was more traditional advertising with T-squares and triangles and blue pencils and can't remember the proportional wheel. I almost couldn't remember the name of it. But then I met my wife, and she is a digital artist and a graphic designer and multimedia designer now. And she taught me Photoshop, she taught me Procreate, and had the tools that I needed to be able to actually put that stuff into practice. And now here I am about 10 years later, and I'm a full-time digital artist. And I love it. I don't want to go back to traditional. All right, he's got a face. That's done. So we can go on to the body now, and we're still doing good on time. We got about 10 minutes left. If you're just joining, if you're watching after the fact and you missed the beginning, I'm only going to be on here for about another 10 more minutes today, but I will be back on hopefully later in the week. If not later in the week, then definitely next week. I also am going to try streaming on Twitch and bouncing back and forth to see which one just seems to work out better. If you have a preference, you can give me a follow on Twitch too if you prefer that. But most likely I'm going to try to do both if I have time. It's just trying to figure out how I can stay logged into OBS on both. That's something I really need to worry about, but keep having to log out of one and log back into the other for Twitch and YouTube, and it's just really time consuming to go through all the login verifications and everything each time. But it's working, we're doing it. So all right, so oh yeah, his pants were blue, I made him gray, so let's change that real quick on this guy. Go, and we'll use that same blue for his pants here. Again, trying to just overdo inside of the spaces. I know I didn't do that for every part. It's a good habit to try to get into, just to make sure you fill in all the pixels. It's one of the reasons I don't like using the automatic selection tool, the color fill. One, the brush I'm using has a lot of texture to it, and you're going to lose all of that, but also, or not lose it, but it's going to interfere, and you're not going to be able to fill in all the pixels with the color. And then also, the other thing is it doesn't actually fill in the lines themselves, so you wind up with these gaps where there's empty pixels, and then you're trying to clip to it, and it's not working out the way you want it to. So freehand selection tool is a lot nicer for that. Plus, if you're doing straight lines, you can tap between 2 points and it'll draw a straight line between those 2 points, which is really helpful for more geometric stuff. But luckily, I've got pretty good control over my hand, so most of the time I just draw the lines. Plus, it's easier if you drew the lines originally than if you're tracing over somebody else's lines too. Ah, I forgot part of the shirt up here, so get that in a second. I thought I got that, but I guess I was too busy talking. Well, have a safe trip back home and keep me posted on stuff. And I will put in the order soon. I don't know, did you text me your order yet? Oh yeah, I got something. Okay, got it. So I'll keep you posted on that too. Alright, here we go. Back to red. Orange for the hoodie. One thing I'll say about trying to put the selection tool right between the lines is there's going to be a happy medium somewhere between how zoomed in or zoomed out you are, or which way you're like me. I like to pull the line down rather than push it up, so I'm turning my canvas there. The more zoomed in you are, the easier it is to get that line right through the line work. The more zoomed out you are, the shorter you have to draw that line. So if you zoom in a lot, the line gets really long. And if you zoom out too much, then all of a sudden the line gets really thin. So there's a happy medium where you're going to be able to do that line in one stroke, but also get the line right through it. So you're going to have to constantly be zooming in and out as you're doing this. So don't be afraid to do that. Sometimes if you put too much, or if you stay too long in one particular area, like if you're not an area, but if you're zoomed in to a particular point for too long, you'll have a harder time doing some parts than others. So being able to constantly change that size to make it easier is something that I can't do with traditional art, and another reason why I love digital. So if you're trying to do this yourself, I would definitely highly recommend getting used to finding that perfect brush size and that perfect amount of being zoomed in, so that when you go to do stuff, it doesn't take more effort than it should. All right, onto the hands. And if you guys are looking at the skin tone thinking it looks kind of sickly, I put a bunch of different layers on top of it by the time I'm done, so it doesn't actually look like this. But it does look kind of yellow, almost kind of sickly in a way. But it won't look like that by the time we're finished. I had it a little bit of a richer skin tone to begin with, and by the time I added everything else on top of it, it just looked a little too dark for what I was going for. I just need the shoes. But if you're thinking the skin tone's a weird choice, I don't love it when I use it as color flats either. But I do like it a lot by the time I get everything else on top of it. Close enough. Now these eyebrows are really bugging me, so I'm going to just play around with those for the last few minutes that I have. I'm just going to get rid of these. Just brush them in. All right, back to the line work. think I might want to give him bushier eyebrows or just thicker eyebrows, but let's see. If they look like they're working size-wise. Yeah, so far. When we flip it, we might need to adjust those a little bit because they're looking a little off-center or something's not quite aligned, but we'll get there. And here I'm going to add in the lines above the eyes first because those are definitely missing. And then go from one eyebrow to the other, just like that. The hair is going to be blocking some of the eyebrow on this side. And I'm going to make the eyebrows a little bit bigger, just in proportion compared to the head. Don't love that curve, so let me turn that up again. It's because this was originally here. Let's get rid of it. Better. Bring the curve down a little bit on the left. Look at it. I think I need to fix the hair a little bit as far as trying to make it look more like coral to get it closer. Because right now, I feel like that needs to get filled in. I feel like we need more hair over here. Oh, I didn't do. It's part of it. He doesn't have a sideburn. Little lock right there like he normally does. Let's get that blocked in there. Put it in front of the ear. That stuff should help a little bit, and then maybe just a little bit peeking through down here. So I feel like you should be able to see it a little bit more. All right, let's fill that in. Whoa, wrong layer. Closer. Definitely closer. Definitely looking better. I feel like I need a little bit more. Let me just do it with the selection tool here. See how it looks. Yeah, I need that. So let me just pencil that in. It's about 3 o'clock now, so let's just talk about it real quick and then we'll wrap up. So hopefully you can see what I meant about keeping it rough to begin with while you're figuring stuff out, because we're still figuring it out now as we're running out of time. But as you're doing these, you just want to start to get a sense for what goes where and proportions, likeness, aging, de-aging, and try to feel like the important stuff, the big stuff's figured out, and then cleaning it up and making it look nice and polished and all that, getting shading and all that's easy. So I'll probably do another stream where I keep working on this. I don't know if it's going to be on Twitch or on YouTube, but if you're interested in signing up to follow those, go to the easiest way, honestly, is to go to my Instagram, which is Josh Dadusmani, and tap on the link there for my link tree. It's going to give you the links to follow me on Twitch and on YouTube. So if you'd be so kind as to follow here before you go, I'd appreciate it. If you want to follow me on Twitch, I'd also appreciate that. But if you want to see me keep working on this, I'm going to do that next time, and we'll see how far we get. But again, I'm not sure when that is, so hopefully you'll follow me and be able to find out that way as soon as it happens. But If you're watching this after the fact, thanks for checking it out. And hopefully I will see you soon for the next one. Thanks. See ya.